Finally, my horrible introverted intuition finally kicks in and puts two and two together. Okay, I want to explain something. So, here's I have a new axiom for the metaphysics that makes everything kind of fall together really nicely. So, the new axiom is simply this, that all reasoning can be rendered circular by moving up a level. And once you accept that reality, then flexible faith becomes the only logical conclusion to draw, right? Alright, so here, let me explain what I mean. The whole idea of flexible faith is that you're intentionally begging the question, right? You're going like, the magical purpose of this event or whatever is X, and then when it doesn't turn out to be X, you just beg the question, and you're like, well, then obviously it was meant to be this instead. I should have seen that. I was just wrong before. But you somehow don't allow that to negatively impact your ability to have equal faith in the future. So the number one axiom of the Church of Flexible Faith is that all goods supervene on faith. All goods supervene on belief without proof. And another sub-axiom of it is, we have no opinion about what you have faith in, assuming it's good. And we don't want to quibble over the definition of good. The second of these dooley bobs, the axiom here, the new one, is all reasoning can be rendered circular by moving up a level. What this means is, for example, in the standardized testing resolution we're debating right now in public forum, well, how accurate are standardized tests, or how useful are they in measuring student and teacher performance or curricular performance, curricular effectiveness or whatever? These are questions that are getting debated back and forth. But, I'm having my students run a discourse, preferred discourse as an alternative pedagogy. And that metas up a level, right? And then you say, well, you're begging the question. Yes, it's effectively testing them. It's accurate. It does help them determine if the curriculum is doing a good job of teaching what they're supposed to be teaching. But our point is they're effectively doing something bad. They're effectively doing the wrong thing. Learning to do the wrong thing more effectively is not a good thing. Okay, so that's an example of making their reasoning circular. You haven't addressed the core question of whether or not what you're testing is good. Alright, that's just one example. Could it possibly work in all instances, Eric? Yeah, it really can. That's the axiom. All reasoning can be rendered circular by moving up a level. So, the next point I want to make here is this. We are talking about time magic a lot. I am talking about time magic a lot. What is time magic? Well, first of all, to understand that, what is space magic? Space magic is physical sciences, engineering. It's making a bridge that doesn't fall down. It's using a lever to increase your power. Stuff like that. That's space magic. And we don't think of it as magical at all. We think of it as repeatable, falsifiable, reliable, real in a way that time magic isn't. We are wrong to make that distinction. Here's why. Time magic is just as real. Time objects are, however, not nearly as static, because while the time object doesn't change, people's perceptions of the time object do. And they do because it's an open system in the way that space is not. So it doesn't change that this thing weighs 100 pounds and that it requires this much leverage to move with this much force, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't change. However, when we render the idea of that into a time object, the utility of that time object is specific to each individual agent. And as people comment upon the time object, people's understanding of what it means and why it's important or significant changes. So I might have a very strong argument about something, and people might perceive it as the status quo truth, only to discover in a few years that I was wrong. Some new argument takes over. So the system's open in a way that space isn't. Alright, so what all does this mean? Well, given the fact that one is dealing in time objects that are evolving all the time in the way that all individuals, all things in an open system ecosystem type thing do evolve, so that the behavior changes if nothing else. That little bird, when it sees a hawk coming down, is going to change its behavior. It's not just going to stay there and keep singing away and say, oh, well, then the hawk can just say, well, this is how it is. The hawk has to be able to adapt as the circumstances adapt. Well, the same thing is true with time objects and with agency, such that as you go through life, you operate on certain axiomatic principles, which are the things you have faith in. You have faith perhaps in your ability to read other people's honesty, or if they're trying to be shady or something. Well, how much faith you have in that is going to have some impact on your willingness to engage with others that you don't know very well. There are a lot of aspects of identity that manifest in very specific ways in terms of how individuals interact with other individuals. And you can determine where their positioning in terms of time and space lie on a couple of perceiving and judging vectors pretty easily by just watching their behavior for a little while. Now, in terms of applying this in your own life, the key thing is knowing what you want, establishing the narratives that facilitate that. What things do you need to believe right now in order to make those things happen? And then you need to believe those things. Take some practice. You should try praying with it too. You know, when I pray to a specific God. But, you pray to whoever you want. Alright then. That's it for today. Remember, prayer is a good way to practice flexible faith from a rationalist perspective, because it is the last thing in the world that you feel comfortable doing. And that's how you develop flexible faith.